Welcome to the Marketing Mentor Podcast with Ilise Benun, founder of marketing-mentor.com and author of 7 books, including The Creative Professional's Guide to Money. Since 2008, Ilise has been interviewing her clients and other successful professional creatives who are doing what it takes to stop the feast or famine syndrome, get better clients, and command the fees they deserve, and sharing the nuts and bolts of what they've learned so you can do it too. You can find more at marketing-mentor.com. And now, here's Ilise Benun.
Hello, everyone. This is Ilise Benun of marketing-mentor.com. And today on the podcast, I have Michael E. Stern, who does time-lapse photography. Michael, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Ilise. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I just wanted to expand that title a little bit. I do construction, time-lapse filmmaking, and corporate portraiture. Those are the 2 pigeonholes I've carved out in the last 4 years, and that's kind of where I'm sitting these days. I've gone from a broad, general practitioner sort of business over the years. I've narrowed it down into these 2 areas that fit me like custom-made gloves that are fur-lined with double stitches along the fingertips.
That's beautiful, and that's exactly why I actually didn't invite you on the podcast. You approached me and said, I need to be on your podcast, and I agreed with you. So tell me why.
I'm a party crasher. What can I tell you? It's been kind of a little thorn in my side that a lot of very good, successful photographers who have a lot to offer the industry and other photographers don't have a large voice because we are not big names, nor do we do high-profile clients, but it doesn't make us any less viable and doesn't make the information we have any less important. And I try to, I devote hours a week to learning about the business, learning about marketing, how to make things better. I came across Creative Live a number of years ago, and back in, I think it was January, I got a call for a new project, and I happened to be watching your program about writing proposals, and it blew my mind. And I've been following you and reading your stuff, and I thought, I have to get on that podcast because I have something to say. And I do that a lot because I've done teaching off and on since 1987. I like bringing information to other people. I like mentoring. I like watching the light bulbs go off. I like helping people. Paying it forward is part of my DNA.
Beautiful. And just to clarify, for people who are interested in that Creative Live course, it's called Command the Fees You Deserve, and it's a 3-day course. And I devote a lot of time on one of those days to how to create a proposal. And you, as you said, you were in the midst of working on a proposal right when you caught it, and it seemed like you found it helpful.
It saved my life. Just even the concept you came up with of the 4 pricing strategies, I hadn't really thought of it that way. I want to be clear to people listening. I am an artist first who was able to develop a business and make a living at it for the last 35 years, going from surviving to thriving. I'm not a business person who's doing photography. I am a photographer. And so my business acumen has come from trial and error and just grinding it out, grunting and grinding, I call it, and building up a business. So having something like your proposal and class and the ideas, I was ready to hear the message, and the message went in deep and hard and hooked in. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And, in a way, you said you went from surviving to thriving. And
yes.
So maybe, I'm assuming and I'm hoping that part of the process and one of the reasons you're thriving now has to do with your niches, the 2 that you identified in your introduction, and your process to getting there. So tell us how you got there.
Well, I've always had 2 goals as a young kid, doing time-lapse photography and portraiture. Seeing my first time-lapse film around 12 years old but realizing over the years that the technology just wasn't there to support it in the way that I wanted to do it. And I kind of pushed it aside and focused on being a photographer in general. And I didn't really do a lot of portrait work on a personal level because I don't like being rejected. If you reject a portrait that I do, you're rejecting part of me. But commercial portraiture, I could push out all day long and do. I've done tens of thousands of headshots. But over the years, architecture, product, copy work, all kinds of other stuff in between. A general practitioner for 20 years, loved it, had a big studio, had guys shooting for me, traveled around the country, went overseas a couple times, had a great time doing just about anything I could get my hands on. And then you get a little older and a little wiser, and you realize you can now see the end game easier than you could when you first started. And there were some things that I still wanted to accomplish. And the technology has allowed time lapse to be done in a very economical and expansive and creative way. And I started getting into it 4 years ago. It was something that the timing, business wasn't so good because of the economy. I was working on tweaking my website and working on SEO and blog posts to sort of create a funnel that Google searches sort of funneled into my website. And I started getting requests for work in May of 2011. And the time-lapse projects, I hit the ground running. I have about 20 films under my belt the last 4 years. And as that has taken off, I've focused more on corporate portraiture as opposed to other types of portrait work. I don't do weddings. I don't do bar mitzvahs. I don't do windows. I do a very specific type of corporate portraiture. And just by staying with those two things, somebody who I called me from a local city to do a time-lapse project, I always ask people when we talk or when we meet, how did they come to pick me and in for the meeting and the presentation? And this one fella said, well, I typed in LA construction time-lapse photography and a bunch of names came up. But when I went to your website, that's actually what you had on your website. You didn't have other things you were doing. And so the words I typed in and the Google hit I got, and when I went to your website, everything lined up and you were doing what you said you were doing, which tells me that some people are SEO is great for time lapse, but then they're doing other things on the website and it confuses the message. And I don't want anybody to be confused about what I'm offering to do for them when they come to my site. So I have stripped out all the extraneous stuff. It's a very focused website. My FAQ is about time lapse. I have a little thing called Why Time Lapse on the front page. I have time lapse narratives, which has all of my examples. I'm OSHA certified. I have a capability statement. All the things that people that do public and private construction projects need to know about if they're going to hire someone to do a time lapse. So I've done the research, I've done the homework, I've talked to the people. What do they want to see? What's important to them? My website is not for other photographers. It's not for marketers. It's for the people that need the kind of thing that I offer. And that's really what drives the positioning and narrowing the types of material that are on the website.
And I'm glad you brought up the website because I do want to focus a bit on that because it is a public forum, and that even when I work with clients on their positioning and we come up with something that they really love, they're nervous to put it on the website. And when we originally talked, Michael, one of the things I loved about what you were saying was that you put yourself in the client's shoes and you think about the fact that they don't know what your work involves and they are being asked to outlay thousands of dollars, and it's a huge leap of faith. And that should drive, and does drive in your case, what your website looks like.
Yes. Back in the old days when we chiseled our photographs out of stone, you were given an assignment and you shot it, and you'd know within hours whether or not there was a reshoot or something involved was not correct, and you could redo it in terms of commercial work, not like weddings or things like that I don't do. However, with time lapse, as you said, there's a leap of faith. They don't really know what they're getting into. They don't really know me. The project will run for weeks, months, or years, and they're not going to know until way down the line after spending thousands of dollars whether or not they got what they want. So your message, or the message that I craft on the website, is to bring comfort. Hey, I arrived at the right place and it's easy to get a hold of me. And I shut up and listen when they call, and tell me about what it is you're looking for. What's the end game that you want? And then I can sort of craft the message to fill in all of those answers that they're looking for.
And, that reminds me actually of another story that you were telling me, which maybe you can elaborate on here, because clearly people come. You want to make sure that the message and your positioning is strong enough and that there's a viable enough market for the people who are going to come. And your service is a very, I assume, high ticket, high priced service. So would you say that the positioning and the narrowness of the niche is even more important if what you're trying to sell is very expensive?
Yes, I am going after the carriage trade. And for those of you who don't know what the terminology means, back in the old days, when photography was relatively new, it was kind of expensive. It wasn't for the common person. It wasn't commoditized. And if you could afford a portrait done by this new thing called photography, you probably had a big fancy house and even a separate carriage house for your carriage. So people that catered to the carriage trade were catering to people with money. That's what I'm going after. People who are highly motivated, appreciate the value of having somebody hiring somebody who's an expert that can do something they can't, and they have money to spend. I tell clients, I am a low volume, high margin shop. I cost more than the competition, but I give every aspect of your project all the attention it deserves. It's done right or it's done for free. I'm going to work on this thing until it's done to your satisfaction. I'm not a high volume, low margin shop that gets in a bunch of work and tries to spit it out because my margins are in single digits and I can't afford to spend a lot of time on it. This is an art form I cultivate. You're coming to me for my artistic vision as well as my technical expertise and my customer service. You are going to be so satisfied working with me that it's going to be a no-brainer after a while, like, oh, I made the right decision. This is very good. He's the right guy. I want you to have that feeling as soon as possible because you're going to spend way more money with me than the competition. And I make no apologies for that because I sweat every detail. I'm responsible for everything on the project, hiring out the subcontractors. It doesn't matter whether I know how to do the software or not. I have to get something accomplished in the editing process. It's got to be done, whether I do it myself or hire it out. It's going to be done correctly, or you're not going to pay for it. And that's my promise.
And you're saying that is clear on your website?
It's clear when I have the discussions. I do try to make some of that clear in the FAQ on my website, but a lot of this kind of stuff sort of comes out in the phone conversation. I give great phone. Back in the old days, again, before the internet, you had to be good on the phone. I do a lot of cold calling, so I've honed that clarification skill, if you will, speaking on the phone. So a lot of it comes out in the conversation because I can really put the emotion into the words I use that you sometimes just don't get from a dry document, but both support what I say to the client.
And I think that's also really important, the idea of, giving good phone and making sure that you talk to the clients and the prospects instead of, giving away too much information so they don't have to talk to you before they make their decision. And the story I referenced was, you said that you had a client who had a $10,000 budget and you spoke to him and then they ended up spending much more because that's what they really needed. Tell us how that works.
Yes. Well, this was the client that happened to reach out to me when you were doing that Creative Live class. International company. They have a U.S. headquarters. They had a project out here locally in L.A. that they needed to have done. The headquarters is back in the Midwest. A Google search, my name popped up, and I was the first one they called. And I asked that too, where am I on the list? And they'll often tell you. And when they're the first one on the list, they don't get off the phone until I'm done saying what I'm going to say, and until I'm done listening to everything they have to say. So after they explain what they were looking for, I offered to go out to the site and kind of give it a once over. They had about $10,000 budgeted for the job. They didn't really understand exactly what they were getting into. I went out, I said, it kind of sounds like that budget could work. Maybe 12 is probably closer if it's going to go as you say, but let me go out and see what I can come up with, because they wanted me to give them some feedback. So based on your class, I put together this detailed proposal that was visual, easy to read. It was about 7 pages. It had the objective, the challenge, and my solution, and then it had a budget proposal attached to it, which was 3 times what they had budgeted originally. And they bit down really hard, and they gulped really deeply, and they bantered back and forth, and they decided that they were going to take a chance with me because of my previous track record, the testimonials on the website, and the way that I addressed their concerns in terms of they made it very clear what they wanted the piece to do for them at the end, and my proposal address those very things. I didn't go off the reservation. I was very focused. And they were very clear, we're spending most of our marketing budget just on your one project. So we're really nervous. And I kept in touch with them during the shoot. I put little snippets online if I did a particularly interesting sequence on a particular part of the process that they wanted documented. So I kept them in the loop, kept them apprised, kept the enthusiasm up in emails and phone calls, but also being hard on the business aspect. I need that direct deposit before I get started. I'm not going to make a move until the money comes in, and it's time for the second payment. We have to get that started. I got to have the money. So, you're kind of wearing 2 hats. You're being the good guy buddy on the one hand, and you're also being the, hardcore business person. But it works. And they were ecstatic with the end product. It exceeded their expectations, and they were the money was well spent.
Excellent. Now, you told me that you spend 2 days a week on your marketing, and you also just said that you do cold calling. So maybe
Yes.
I'd love for you to explain just a little bit, because we don't have that much more time left, but explain just a little bit how you do your marketing and what exactly you do.
A long time ago, a woman who was very successful and self-employed told me that there's a time of day when you're the most efficient for certain tasks. I'm a morning person. So administration, business, banking, money, budgeting, all the stuff that has to deal with numbers, I do in the early part of the day. She also said there are certain times of the week when you're more apt to be charming and personable. And I took that advice, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are my days to be charming and go out into the field, meet people, go to networking events, make phone calls, write emails. So my marketing days are Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have a running document on in my text edit program that goes back 3 years and details on a weekly basis who I contacted, what I asked them, what I found out about them, what are their needs, what was the end result of the conversation, what and when is the follow-up. I have a running log of that. I have to do at least 25 contacts a week minimum of reaching out to people or dealing with inquiries that come in from the website. I also get a lot of business by reading the business section of the LA Times. And when new projects are being announced, I do my forensic detective work and go backtrack and find the name of the company, who's in charge of the project, what their contact information is, and then I craft a plan of when and how I'm going to reach out to them initially. So that's done twice a week. and of course, if something special comes up, I'm going to deal with it and drop everything else. But it's phone calls, emails, letters, marketing, reaching out, developing new business. It really happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm relentless about it. I don't slough off. I don't feel so like it today. I'm going to give it a day off. I don't do that. I'm doing it every week, twice a week.
Sounds like you have the right attitude and everything flows from that.
Well, when you're self-employed, everything is your responsibility. Everything you can possibly think about is your responsibility, and all the things you don't know are your responsibility. And if you don't have the right attitude of, I got to get up and get at it, you'll get eaten alive. And I've been doing this 35 years, so for me, it's been working.
And just to give a little context, your goal or your capacity is how many jobs per year?
How many jobs per year? It depends on the length of the project. Earlier in the year, I had 5 films going on simultaneously. 3 were actively shooting and 2 were in post-production. And that was about my limit. But that was all bunched up. I'm still doing post-production on 2 films right now. It's really contextual. I could do one project. I have a quote out for a project that's $250,000 that'll take 2 years to do. That could be the only job I'd have to do for the next 2 years if I wanted to, because the budget and the margins are so good. But smaller jobs that run a month or 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months, 2 jobs a year, 10 jobs a year. It's hard to imagine doing more than probably 6 or 7. It really just depends on the scope of work. Mm-hmm. That really defines everything.
All right. And my last question for you, this has all been great, and I'm sure we could talk for a long time, Michael. But one of the things that people I hear say a lot when we talk about positioning and narrowing your niche is, I don't want to alienate anyone. What is your perspective on that?
You know what, Ilise? Just by getting out of bed this morning, I alienated somebody somewhere because I'm still alive. You can't be all things to all people. And I want a specific type of client, and I know the clients I don't want. After 35 years, I know what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. And if my professional, polite, and direct website offends you, then you're probably not a good fit for me anyway. And I just don't worry about that anymore. Now, I'm not doing retail. I'm not volume. I got to get 55 portrait sittings a week to make my sales goals. I'm not retail. I'm a boutique custom shop who's very picky about the people he works with. So by definition, some people are, I'm cutting out a large part of the market, and I'm okay with that.
Beautiful. Tell people where they can find your website, this website we're talking about, and anything else about you.
The website, I tried to use every letter in the alphabet, but I didn't quite make it. It's called buildabetterphotograph.com. It was based on a book and a podcast I published back in 2009. So the actual name of the website doesn't quite fit what I do now, but it sort of does, because build and construction kind of fit. So I'm ambivalent right now about whether or not to keep it, but buildabetterphotograph.com. And if anybody listening to this podcast has questions about time lapse in terms of thinking of doing it for your own business, I'm always glad to speak with you on the phone or help out. I have students back when I was teaching at Brooks Institute years ago still reach out to me for advice and mentoring, and I'm happy to do that for anybody that's listening.
That's very generous. Thank you so much. And thank you
pleasure.
For taking the time and for reaching out to me and saying, I need to be on this podcast. I am open to people who feel that way and who have something to say and something to share, because clearly you have a lot to share.
Well, thank you, Ilise. I do appreciate that. And like I say, I'm a party crasher. So if you want me to come back, I'm happy to.
I think we have more things to talk about, so I do.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. And don't hang up yet. I'm just going to sign off. This is Ilise Benun of marketing-mentor.com. And if you don't get my quick tips and special deals, you can sign up for those on my website. And I will be back again soon with more information, especially these days, about how to pick your niche and how to thrive in a niche. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Now go try out what you've learned. If you like what you hear, you can go to marketing-mentor.com and sign up for Ilise's Quick Tips from Marketing Mentor and her free 30-minute mentoring session to get your burning questions answered. Check out what's on sale in the Marketing Mentor shop, like the Pick a Niche Kit, proposal bundles for designers and copywriters, and the 30 Minutes a Day marketing plan. Ilise is also the host of the How Design Live podcast, a programming partner for How Design Live, the largest design conference, and you can learn all about that at howdesignlive.com. Until next time.